You're watching Standing on Guard here on AM Live, where we keep an eye on the enemy. And of course, we are focusing on the matters security, taking a look at what is happening here in the country as far as security is concerned, the region, and also a panoramic view of what is happening internationally as far as security is concerned. Right now, we want to pick up a page in the East African where our conversation is concerned as far as one of our panelists is also concerned. This is Dr. Peter Biar Ajak. And it says, Lawyers Union 6 EACJ help to free Juba political prisoners. We can just read a bit of it. The release of political detainees was part of the September 12th deal. And it says that the Arusha-based Pan-African Lawyers Union has gone to the East African Court of Justice to force the South Sudan government to release political detainees. The release of political detainees was part of the September 12 peace agreement. We have Debarl Inea, that is a Palu chief executive, has filed habeas corpus, a writ requiring a person under arrest to be brought before a judge at the EACJ for business and philanthropist Peter Biar Ajak, who has been detained without trial since April. Allies of Mr. Ajak told the East African that they do not know his whereabouts since he led a prisoners' protest at the National Security Service premises, commonly known as the Blue House, on October the 7th. And I can just try and show you what it says there. It's a bit tiny for me, but you can see also Amnesty International has also called for the release of a prominent South Sudanese academician and activist, Dr. Peter Biar Ajak, who was arrested on July the 28th at the Juba International Airport and is believed to be held at the Blue House. The government is accused of denying the detainees access to their families, lawyers and doctors. They're confined and given 1 meal per day. Since Mr. Ajak's arrest, the campaign Free Peter Biar has generated considerable support online, with 78,600 people signing a petition calling for his release. Mr. Ajak has been the leading voice of a civil society in South Sudan, calling for generational change as the only way for peace to come to South Sudan. Amnesty International says that it is believed that his arrest is linked to the youth forum that he intended to hold in a well. And so in the case filed by Palu at the EACJ, Mr. Dare says that there are fears that Mr. Ajak's family is in danger, and the lawyers' organization is invoking the court's powers to compel the South Sudan Attorney General to promptly produce him in the court. And this is just one of the many, of course, political prisoners that have still in custody in South Sudan. And remember also last week there was a breakout, and so the harsh sort of measures have been put on the prisoners. That's why they cannot see their families, or even get access to their lawyers and doctors for medical, of course, care as well. And so this, as we mentioned, is the 89th day since Peter Biar Ajak was put in custody in South Sudan, and they've not been arraigned in court, him amongst many. And we wonder why. He has been vocal, as we've read from the East African, in regard to making sure that there is that generational change or transformational leadership in South Sudan, with, of course, that particular under the rubric of generation exits. That is what was mainly the rallying call that Dr. Peter Biar Ajak is actually fighting for. Let's just put this to a panelist, and we've been mealy-mouthed also as panelist, and of course as a show. He has been one of us, and at some point we lost track of what is happening to Peter because of the scanty information as well. But what do you think right now should happen as far as this is concerned? 89 days in custody and no court arraignment. Right now you cannot see your family. 1 meal per day. No access to medication. Dr. Peter, Dr. Wirunga.
I think, one, I don't understand then what was the essence of this peace treaty. Because I thought one of the things that was meant to be done was the release of all political prisoners.
Yes.
So that they start on a new slate. Now, that we've not seen, and therefore we have to go back to our heads of states what business were they doing coming up with an agreement, peace agreement, when they cannot enforce it? Because you need to enforce what you have asked your colleagues to sign off.
Yes.
And therefore, Debarl, I don't understand, because in any situation, when you do what they did and people agree to start afresh, then any encumbrances that have been part and parcel of any of the two are supposed to be done with so that the country starts afresh. And in any case, you are put in place unless you become a security risk,
yes,
which is very, very amorphous, unless your problem was being a security risk to the nation, but not a political thing or a political issue that probably the system at that time felt that you are becoming a political threat, then Peter Biar should be out. But number two, I think if I'm not wrong, I also know Peter Biar's family. I think the father is or was a lieutenant general. So it could be just an extension of the wars amongst the big people. I think I had a lengthy chat with him before he left. And I think his father is or was a general. So maybe that is one angle we don't understand. Could it be an extension of, if you can't deal with the father, deal with the children? So that is something that we also need to understand. But in totality, even with that kind of information, I think my problem is, what then was the essence of this peace agreement? Because a peace agreement is meant to allow the country to start afresh.
Yes. Okay. Let's say from Dr. Mustafa.
Yeah, Debarl, Dr. Wirunga is right. One of the clauses of the most recent peace agreement that was signed between Riek Machar and Salva Kiir is very clear: release all political prisoners. And now that that has not happened, and we know for sure, very clearly, that Peter Biar Ajak is a prisoner because of his engagements, because of his ideas, which are very progressive. It means that the leadership in South Sudan are not really looking at the peace agreement and the truce in its entirety, and that is dangerous for South Sudan. It's very important that the leadership in Juba releases all the political prisoners to be a part and process of healing in South Sudan. It's very unlikely, it's highly unlikely that a person like Peter Biar Ajak would be a threat to the national security of South Sudan. He only has been using his mouth and ideas, he's been presenting ideas. You know, when he talked about the generational exit, I think this is something to be debated, and it should be debated right in Juba, not even just in this panel. We call on the government of South Sudan to release Peter Biar Ajak so that we can continue to debate and talk about these ideas that Peter Biar Ajak has been talking about in this panel and in many forums around the world. I think it's now up to call on the consulate or the embassy of South Sudan here in Nairobi if we can talk about these issues openly.
Right. And of course, if you not seen the website that really also is advocating for his release, this is change.org. And we have some also of the students from his, of course, alumni. Some of the students from Harvard University. They are putting this particular petition, as we read earlier, 78,768 have signed. And they were agitating for 150, or they were pushing for 150,000 people to sign this petition. And just to give a snippet of that information, Peter Biar Ajak was arrested in South Sudan on July the 28th. He's a youth advocate for peace and a friend and inspiration to many who know him around the world. He's currently being held without charge at the notorious South Sudanese prison known as the Blue House. His friends at universities, human rights institutions, media organizations, and other around the world are calling for his release. Peter's arrest comes amid a worrying trend in arbitrary detentions due to a crackdown on freedom of expression by South Sudanese government. Amnesty International reports numerous recent arrests without charges. This goes against South Sudan's constitution which states no one can be held without charge for more than 24 hours. Peter was one of the lost boys of South Sudan, displaced during the war. When he was young, he lived in refugee camps before being taken to the United States by humanitarian charities. Once in the U.S., he learned English and studied hard, securing a place at the LaSalle University, then completed a master's at Harvard before studying for PhD at Cambridge University in UK. His inspirational story was recognized when he became an Atlantic Council Millennium Fellow and Desmond Tutu Leadership Fellow. In June, Peter was awarded the Crans Montana Forum's New Leader for Tomorrow award by His Excellency Musa Traore, former president of Mali. Peter has always kept his focus on South Sudan and his hope for a peaceful future for his custody. He has worked in think tanks, his national government and institutions working for development and peace. And it can read on and on. You can actually head over to that particular website. This is change.org and see his story. If you've not or you're not familiar with his face, he has been, or he is a panelist here on Wednesday on Standing on Guard when we discuss issues of security, not only in South Sudan, but also the entire world. A very rich repository of knowledge is as far as security is concerned. Let's just hear from Ambassador Rasas Mwencha. With this development so far, 3 months without custody, that is hard to bear, even for the family.
Yeah, Debarl, first of all, our hearts and prayers to Peter, but also to his family. I just can't imagine how those young children are feeling when they cannot even be able to get an explanation as to where their father is and what is happening. But also let's commend these efforts by Amnesty and the others that have gone to court, the East African Court, because South Sudan is seeking to be a member of the East African community and therefore must live with certain values. And let's hope that this will be carried through and through. I would also encourage them to go to the African Court of People and Human Rights. They have been known to give far-reaching rulings that can also, in a way, isolate South Sudan so that South Sudan can live with the norms that they purport to say in their constitution. Having said that, it's unbelievable that you sign a document whose very tenets espouse that you have a new start,
yes,
but you fail to start. And we have said here before that many of us have always, we give unqualified support, qualified support
yes,
to this peace agreement. But each passing day, I now realize how right we were in thinking and saying that this is going to be another false start, that South Sudan is far from really achieving its dream. And sadly, this is a nation that achieved independence, we'll call it its status in 2011, and many of those leaders were living out here. They were in Kenya, they were in Uganda, and one would have expected that they learned from their hosts, best practices. But when you look at it, it's heart-rending that this is a very young nation that is gone astray the manner they have done.
Right. Professor Naomi Damba.
Debarl, dear Congo has never been peaceful since Patrick Lumumba. The crime in that country is a stockpile of natural resources. The same case in South Sudan. We are aware of this video that was circulating where somebody is bathing in a pool full of dollars and they're riding Learjets. There is incredible small arms coming into the country from all sides. There is incredible pilferage of the country goods looted so that they can land in Australia, Kenya, and everywhere else. Given the fabric of the country right now, I do not anticipate a peaceful coexistence to come out clean and bring the people back together, focus on development. It's not going to happen tomorrow. So Ambassador Mwenje is right. We have to insist as East Africa community that if you are going to be part of us, then you have to follow the norm of a civilized country. IGAD need to continue demanding, AU need to continue demanding, and if you have to isolate these leaders, so be it.
All right.
Yeah, I think just to add on what Ambassador Mwenje said, I think, Ambassador, it's not that the people have to go to court for South Sudan to adhere. The protocols of joining East African community is very clear. Yes. One of the things is that you must have a stable country, your governance system must be good, you must have none of what we are seeing in South Sudan. Yes. Yeah. And therefore, I'm baffled how our leaders could even be considering South Sudan joining the East African community when the protocols for joining East African community are very clear.
Yes.
Number two, a peace treaty has a guarantor. Who is the guarantor of this recent peace treaty for South Sudan? Because that is the person who is supposed to guarantee that that peace will be actualized. Who is the guarantor, Ambassador? Because
well, it was signed in,
yes.
In Khartoum.
Yes, because that is the person who is supposed to ensure.
It was signed in Khartoum, but if you look at the intention and process
yes.
initially, it was supposed actually to enjoin all the leaders.
Yes.
Even the process itself should have been in Khartoum, Kampala, and Nairobi,
yes.
so that you could have all the leaders jointly as guarantors.
Yes.
But of course, Khartoum stole the limelight and went ahead and concluded that agreement. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yes.
The agreement is signed, fault as it may be, but you are not even implementing it.
Now, but that is why.
Which means that
yes.
Sudan itself
yes.
should really look at it and say, where is this going?
And I think with this current one, to my understanding, although I've not gone through the real document, there are actually sections for punitive action if they don't implement what they've signed. Now, if we have African leaders who are allowing what Professor has said, fellows coming here with shoes of $10,000, swimming in dollars, and he's showing us how he's living in a presidential suite. And surely we know that kind of fellow. You know, you can see a person who has grown in wealth. I looked at that fellow and I didn't see him growing in wealth. No. So he must have acquired that kind of money through some dubious means. And then as a country, we know what is going on in South Sudan. And we allow those fellows first to appear on our national TV and show us how they're playing around with money. So I also blame our regional leaders. And I think, Ambassador, from AU, you understand this. Our regional interests is actually messing up. And number two, we don't think, we don't have a father figure, president who is respected in this region. You know, like the Moi days, he had his own issues in Kenya, but Moi was a respected leader around the region. And therefore, most of them will turn to him and say, this is what is happening in Somalia, what should we do? I think that is where we have a problem, that all our regional leaders do not have the capacity to ensure that what they sign and force the people of South Sudan to sign is implemented. And I can assure you, for as long as we have that weakness, South Sudan will continue being what it is.
Yeah, if we don't.
Yes.
Yeah. Is it part of East African community now?
No, it's planning to join.
Yeah, then even the little bit progress that has been made to become part of East African, everything should be suspended.
Yeah.
I think the East African community should call on Sudan, should write them a letter, suspend everything until they put their house in order and put in place mechanism, or first of all start by releasing the political prisoners, and then seeing to it that the latest peace agreement that the two signed, a peace agreement is not a piece of takataka paper. It's a solemn agreement, and they have to abide by it, Debarl. If they continue doing what they're doing, then why should we have any business dealing with them? The reason why Somalia was not even considered to be a part of East Africa is because it is in shambles and people are not moving in any meaningful direction. Now, in fact, Somalia seems to be moving in a more meaningful direction than South Sudan. So what business do we have having South Sudan on the East African community? Nothing.
I think it is fully fledged part of the East Africa community right now, and even that's why Mr. Dare is actually going to the East African Court of Justice to seek the release of some of these political prisoners.
I think it has not been accepted yet.
Not
yet.
No,
not fully.
No, I think we had this discussion and we said why. Maybe Mr. Mwenji can tell us.
There's a principle that they will become members of East Africa community.
Yes.
But they have not fulfilled all the conditions.
Yes.
For instance, if you look at the trade protocol and all the other things, they are not doing that because they are in the process.
But they applied.
Yes, so
and then they were given observer status.
Okay, it might be beyond my knowledge, but I remember we had this discussion and at some point, I don't know if it was this forum, and we asked, why do we have the South Sudan who have been accepted into the East African community and they've not, checked out the list as far as those regulations and requirements is concerned, right? And maybe the case will be again, why then will Mr. Dare have all that particular chicks right now to go to the East African Court of Justice if South Sudan is not really part of all fully fledged?
Yeah,
yes.
I'm reading it here from the East African community website. South Sudan is the newest member of the East African community.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is also referred to as the youngest nation in Africa. I think they should be suspended today if possible.
Yeah. So I think from that point of view, so they are not awaiting. They are the newest member of East African community.
And we should not be babysitting South Sudan.
I think if we had taken a stand as African continent on the Congo issue, there will be settlement in Congo, and Congo will be a bread basket for the entire continent of Africa. The same thing with Sudan, and we should not accept this in the continent of Africa, and we should not be talking about AU organizing for development when this kind of thing is happening. Peter's crime is simple. He's calling for a rational thinking, a rational government, for coexistence of the people, for taking care of the poor. That should not be poor. That should not be refugees. That is Peter's crime. So this nonsense must not continue to be accepted in the international community.
All right. But again, just like what we are now saying, now that it's been confirmed. Actually, I've been arguing because I didn't expect it to join, because it cannot meet even a quarter of the conditions.
Yeah, that was actually the questions people were asking, raising. They do not really meet. How did they even manage to pass through the grid?
How are they accepted? You see, that's now what begs the question, and that's why we go back to the same leaders who accepted a country like South Sudan to join the East African community, floating all the protocols required to join, and now we are talking the same language with South Sudan. Surely.
Their national are enjoying the security. They're traveling all over.
And all the protocols and all the privileges of East African community, and they are still doing what they are doing in their own country. It is strange.
Maybe people are gaming from the system, of course, looking at even the latest documentary by Alan Amo, The Profiteering. That is why maybe they had a seamless flowing entry into the East African community, because there are people who are gaming the system and they're profiteering from the instability in South Sudan. Right? So what is the way forward as far as now the petition is concerned? Are we trying to push the envelope, all of us, to make sure that Peter Biar Ajak is released from prison?
Debarl, Peter and all political prisoners should not stay there one single day. No. If these people are serious about the development of South Sudan, if they're serious about independence, if they're serious about coexistence, these people ought to be released.
Yes.
So they're part of the development strategy.
All right. Okay, if you've not, I can see you are straining at the list. You say something before you move on.
I don't know whether we should classify Peter, and this is just, by the way, I don't know whether we should classify him as a political prisoner or prisoner of what? Conscience. There are those who are prisoners of conscience. He believes in this. He has not done anything politically wrong, but because he's so firm with what he thinks and believes in, the system feels this guy must be put aside for us to move. So is he a political prisoner or a prisoner of what? Conscience or conscience, whatever you call it. Yeah, I think that's where the problem is.
So we should not classify him.
No, I don't think it's a.
Yes,
yes, I don't think it's
with other political prisoners that
Yes,
we're talking,
yeah.
Mr. Gok and the rest.
Yes.
Him is a different kettle of fish.
I think he's a
Completely, yes.
prisoner of
Okay.
conscience.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the difference?
Because what Peter Biar stands for, and he speaks, because he's a chairperson of South Sudan Youth Movement. So he speaks for some people. And therefore, if the government of South Sudan wanted to deal with Peter Biar, they should have looked at him as a chairperson of a movement that is taking place in South Sudan. And therefore, he's not political per se.
In fact, he was not a politician.
Yes, he was not.
He's never been.
Yeah, he's never. And because politics has gained such a, it's become such a bad word. You know, someone once said that politics is the oldest profession in the world and is not different from the first. I think we should be calling Peter Biar Ajak as a prisoner of conscience.
Of conscience, yes.
And I think, Debarl, perhaps we should ask the Consul General, Ambassador of South Sudan in Nairobi. Let him come and let us talk about these issues here. Invite him.
The iron, Debarl, is if you look at the struggle, of the people of South Sudan, was to be able to enjoy certain freedoms, like freedom of beliefs. When they argued that Sharia law was universally applied,
Yes.
and that they wanted a nation that they would also be able to propagate their own beliefs. And Peter's only crime has been that he believes that there is a generational change. That is because of the impatience of the young people who have seen this dream of a new nation just vanish in the air. And so I want to agree very much that let's invite the ambassador here. Let him really come out and tell us what is really happening inside South Sudan.
All right, we'll make that attempt. Unless, Professor, you have something to say, we can move on.
What
please.
I want to say, Debarl, is these people fought to be independent for years. They were fighting Sudan.
Yes.
We isolated South Sudan, traumatized the people, did everything. And all of a sudden, the same Sudan become the independent arbitrator for a peaceful coexistence.
Yes.
Something is wrong.
Right, thank you.
Something is not quite right.
Something is not quite right. This is what Midambo is saying. But this is the website again. If you've not, or if you know Peter Biar Ajak and you've not really signed that petition, the number stands at 70,768 right now. And of course, that is a target over here. That is 150,000. And you have a snippet of what Peter Biar Ajak is all about, what it stands for here. You can sign the petition over here. Just go to www.change.org or .org, www.change.org, freedom for Peter Biar Ajak, right? So let's stand in support. And remember, the hashtag is free Peter Biar. The hashtag is free Peter Biar. Once again, this is the website, Freedom for Peter Biar Ajak. You can head over there and sign the petition.